before we begin, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on post notifications so you're notified whenever I post a new video. Thank you for tuning back in. If you're new to my channel, make sure you follow me on my social media so you're updated with any new updates, because your girl just be on the go. Okay, today's video, we are going to watch a Jubilee conservative versus liberal gays middle ground. One that we're going to start off with is, should LGB be separated from TQIA? Me personally, I'm not part of the community, so I don't think I really have a say. But just me personally, I view them separate. Should they be separated? I don't know. Like, I guess it's up to them. But yeah, we're just going to go ahead and get started.
My name is John, and I am a Patreon member who is asked to read you this next prompt. The LGB should be separated from the TQIA+.
Saying they should be separated is not saying that one is, less important.
Yeah, agreed.
So I do want to start with that. But I do think that the LGB is very specific, rooted in science. It's very clear as day. You have lesbian, gay, and bi. Main difference between male and female, we all know what that is.
The reason why I stepped forward with hesitation was because I think that there are such lived differences in experiences that we experience. Although collectively, I think that we all know the collective experience of being a sexual deviant. There just is a difference in lived experience that I think is important to talk about and acknowledge, and that's my grounds for agreeing with perhaps a separation.
Mine is very different. To be clear, the science is very solid on identities other than gender assigned at birth being valid. Science is very clear, robust, there is no question that it's legit. We, as cisgender people, do a really bad job of standing up for people who aren't cisgender. I call out the fact that cisgender queer people are treated differently than non-cisgender queer people, and until we do better, we don't deserve to have the letters be together.
Much better grounds.
So, I mean, I agree with what you're saying, but I think in general this conversation can become very hostile because it seems like, I'm like, oh, I don't want you to be a part, like I don't want you to be my friend, I don't want to be with you, be next to you, be seen with you, and that's not the case. One is an identity and one is a sexuality, and that's just the simple difference between the two. Eventually, as both groups are fighting for their own personal interests, those are going to not work cohesively. So one is going to be quieter and one is going to get taken advantage of, et cetera. And it's not that we can't support the TQ+.
Right.
I just think that they're two vastly different things.
I think that you oversimplify identity versus sexuality, though, because there are tons of men who identify as straight who have, on occasion, with regularity, once in their life, sex with men, which is why...
They're bi. I think once with men, sure, experimenting, but I think if there is a guy that's identifying as straight that sometimes dabbles with men,
He might identify as straight, but he's not.
You're bi.
So two things. First of all, there are lots of gay men that we can call gay all day and all night that occasionally have sex with women, and we don't question whether or not they're gay.
They're bi.
But are you entitled to titling someone else's? Is
Is
that up to you?
The title is an objective fact. If you sleep with men and women, then you are bi.
What if someone that we're
I don't care
talking
what
about
you
doesn't
feel.
agree?
Yeah.
If you don't
That
agree,
doesn't make
that's fine.
sense.
But the fact is, you sleep with men and women, so you're bi.
Flat out.
Can we not talk about who we're having sex with? Just for this problem.
Because a lot of what's in the media today is sensationalized content about
they were correct, though. I
targeting
think
children. A lot of it is valid, and some of it is not. But a lot of times, it's gay men that are doing it, and trans people are getting blamed for it when it's really gay men in drag.
Right.
And because the letters are together, people don't know the difference. And even when I first started coming out, the first thing that somebody said to me was, are you going to transition into a woman? And I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with my sexuality. There's nothing wrong with doing that, but because they're together from an outsider's point of view, optically, I think if our goal is to educate the populace on who we are, then we need to make a more clear distinction between LGB and TQ+.
I don't disagree. I think it's just important that if we do that, we don't erase any of the validity of the people who are in the group that we're not a part of. And also, what I wonder about in this context is some people are born intersex, so they have sexual organs of both genders.
Right.
how do we identify under the criteria you guys have identified? How would we label them?
People
because
say
if they have both
intersex like that's
and
the
they
vast
have
majority.
sex with only one
There is a
gender,
small percentage of
what are
people
they?
who are born intersex.
It's such a rare case. I'm not
But it
saying they
does
don't
exist.
exist.
Yeah.
I don't think
it
the
does.
exception makes the rule.
Yeah, like
I
there's
think-
people born with 11
I think
fingers.
as human
There's
beings, we
people-
like to package things that we can develop a palette for. We like to make things more palatable. We like to establish clear-cut rubrics
Right.
for what is and what isn't a person. I think that's just the natural human
That's
tendency.
how our brain categorizes
But
things.
but I think that what separates us from the apes is that we can give credence to these differences and create pockets of space at least for a discussion if you don't necessarily agree or whatever.
I think it would be an incredible disservice to the transgender community who gave us a lot of the beginning for us to fight for our rights, a separation from them, now that we have our rights. That's just so privileged of us, like Marsha P. Johnson threw that first brick at Stonewall, and because of her.
She didn't throw the first brick.
Or the second or the
She got there
third.
at 2 a.m., first of all. And second of all, Marsha P. Johnson was also a gay man. So when she was fighting for those rights, she was fighting for gay rights because she was gay.
Was she a
I
gay
totally
man because
agree.
of the time that it was?
She
I
didn't.
don't
She
know,
didn't
but she
transition
was
until
gay.
long
She-
after Stonewall actually happened.
but you
But that's
can't-
neither here nor
I don't-
there.
well-
We're here to defend. I'm here to defend the TQ being part of the LGB. Yes, there are some gay men that will overlook what's underneath the belt. That happens. But to say that you have to like them, that's wrong. And I also have a heart for the Q because we can't clearly define the Q. When I was young, it was questioning. Now it's queer. Queer was a slur once upon a time. But I look at those people who were former homosexuals who now live a heterosexual lifestyle. They're never going to be accepted by the straight community, and they're not going to be accepted by our community. So I've put them under the Q umbrella. Those straight people who do have sex with the same gender on occasion, they would fall under that Q. They may not fall under the B. So I have a heart for them because they do exist in our spheres. We just can't put them on a pedestal above any of us because we're all in this together.
I also don't think that they should be divorced because I'm a huge disability advocate. I have a mental health condition. It's very different from someone who uses a wheelchair. We still have a disability.
What you're getting at is that we're a minority.
Thank
They're a
you.
minority. And the more that you take apart those minorities, the harder it is for us to fight for our rights.
The queer
Possession
community is
and
the
need
queer community is
diversity
already
between
divided.
minorities.
Since the queer community is already divided, I think separating the two is going to make them even more divided and a lot more animosity between queer and T with LGB.
It's a double-edged sword because in one way it's like, okay, well, we don't want to divide too much because we don't want to lose our united front against heteronormativity or whatever. But then at the same time, if we can't teach the nuances of our various identities to a heteronormative society, then it's like, okay, well, aren't you gay? Aren't you trans? Like it's all the same thing to them. So I think it's a balance between being all awash and then also noting that we are uniquely made up of all these different experiences. And
But I think if we had a
all agree
stronger
here that they
community,
all
like
matter.
that wouldn't be the case. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Like if you don't like me because who I am, I know that my brother right here, or my sister right there is gonna like me and they're gonna support me. And that's all I need because it's all about my personal experience and what's in my circle. You don't need to be in my circle, but because it's within my own circle that I'm getting all this, belittlement and hatred. Everyone just wants to be accepted. Honestly, like that's the way it's looked at.
And can we all, to some extent, identify
I feel
underneath
like
the
a
Q?
lot of
Your
times
attraction
with
maybe
these
has shifted in
conversations,
some way
I'm
to
just, like,
different
sitting
types
here
of
zoned
men.
out.
Like things are
It's like
constantly
a lot of
evolving and
these
in my opinion
topics, they're
fluid.
talking in
So
circles,
to kind
kind
of
of.
force ourselves even into the
Like, it's like
LGB is to
recycling
sit
talking
within the
points,
binary that doesn't
recycling
help any of us
conversations.
anyways.
But I think all the Q stuff is just a matter of your personality. Right. Like we have so many different labels and you like this kind of person, then you're this sexuality, when reality just goes back to
But it's not
you're
a
gay,
function
straight, or
of
bi,
hetero- but
and then
that's
your personality.
But our
And it's
community is
just-
not doing itself any services by categorizing ourselves. Bear, twink.
Yeah,
And then you
twunk,
see it
yeah.
on the apps, on the profiles. Oh, no fats, no femmes, no this, no that. We're already segregating ourselves.
We can still be a community while having a better way of explaining what the differences are between the letters. Because, I mean, even in our conversation today, you guys are talking about a lot of anti-LGBTQ legislation. And as if I was a gay person watching, I would think, oh my gosh, like they're coming for my rights, they're coming for my rights. But a lot of times that legislation has to do with the TQ+. And I'm not saying I agree with it, we don't need to go into the legislation. All I'm saying is that the narrative that gay men are being attacked when other letters are, not giving any merit to the attacks, it is confusing and it's harmful to young gay men and their success because they're force-fed this narrative that they can't.
That's totally fair, but there's been over 560 legislation bills put into some sort of vote, right? And over 220 of those have been for transgender. That leaves, what, around 300 plus, not just at the TQ?
I think that there's a lot of nuance when it comes to the laws that we have to talk about. But either way, when you say over 500 LGBTQ plus, the distinction between the two gets lost, and I don't think that it's.
I passed one of those laws.
No one's
I
saying it
passed
doesn't
one of those
matter.
laws in Nebraska that protects children under the age of 18 from receiving gender-affirming care and hormones. Because I've seen.
And you're proud of that.
Yes, I am very proud
I
of
am
that.
so ashamed
because,
of you.
Because I have friends who had their first experience
amount
with
of
affirming care.
internalized
Can I
homophobia
finish?
and queerphobia and
But can I
shame that
finish?
we're sitting here
But
with
can I
because
finish?
of the stuff you felt as a child
I'm sure a lot of
is
us
so
disagree with him,
sad.
but let him finish because we both have things
We can
to say.
all talk, but like let's let.
Because
each other
when I
finish.
passed this legislation that you say targets LGBT people, I sat next to a young girl who her first experience with this type of care was a double mastectomy at 15. She's now 19, doesn't
And
know
how
if she'll be
common
able
is
to.
that?
It's
It's
actually
not.
very common because
How common? I want a number.
Can
How
I
common?
finish?
How common?
Can I
This
finish?
Is, you
though?
passed
You're
the law.
asking me a question in the middle
you
of my
passed a
statement.
law. You
You're
passed a
asking-
law
Look
that
at
affects
I think
so
that's
many
Tyshawn.
kids from feeling like
The one
themselves.
Yes, I did.
Transgender
I'm proud
kids.
of my law.
That's unfortunate, and I'm ashamed
If
of
that's
you
what it's
because.
going to take to get you to stop so I can finish my thought, I appreciate that.
All right, you know
So-
what? I'm going to shut up until you finish, but I would really like to say something when you're done.
Sure. The person that I testified with, who their experience was a
The
double
one
mastectomy.
person.
Let him
The
finish.
one
Let him finish.
person.
Let him finish.
Are you
Let him
gonna one
finish.
step in? Like,
Let
can
him
we
finish. Let him
let
finish.
People talk.
Okay, that one person was one person in Nebraska, but I know a plethora of
what
other
state do you live
people.
in?
Hold on, let him finish. Let
I
him
know a
finish.
plethora of other people in other states
The
all over this
generalizations
country.
are so easy. I
who
know
are
plethora of
feeling-
people all over
Okay,
the
let's
country.
pause.
Can
and
we
then
not
can-
do this? Like, what is the what is
I'm sorry,
what's the?
I
Can
can't
we let
stay
him
with
talk?
people.
Let's just
You're gonna
pause.
get
Thank you,
time
stop
to talk.
talking.
I don't appreciate
Okay.
that.
I know, I'm furious too, but let's
But here's
let
the
him
deal.
finish.
He's pissed off more than you, and he's quiet. Just let him. You're gonna get your point out. Just let him.
I'm
talk.
good. Thank you.
Just let him talk.
Okay, let's pause.
You say how many people? You say it's a small subset. But for the people who it affects them for the rest of their lives. A decision they made as a child will affect them for the rest of their lives. This person will never feel their sensation on their chest. They don't know if they're going to ever be able to have a child, and they know they will never be able to breastfeed. They will never be a woman in the regular senses. And this is happening
I agree
more
with
and
that
more
legislation,
because
not
we
gonna
are
lie.
conditioning our young people
'Cause I
to
feel
say,
like
hey,
we have to-
this is okay, this is okay. You can make these decisions. As a senior
agree with
in this
him on
community, I have to say,
Because,
wait
like,
a second.
the
You guys are
decision
kids.
depends on the
Wait till
person's
you have your
popular
whole
circuit.
lives.
But the person's
Let's
not old enough to
talk
make that
about
decision.
this.
Wait till that
Honestly,
person
shame on you
becomes
for
of age to make
not
that decision. I don't
going
think the
after
parent should
the
make the
actual
decision for
facts.
them
I
or
realize
what's
your
the
anecdotal
parent knows
experiences
what's best for the
move
child.
you, and I respect and
Like-
appreciate that. But let's be perfectly clear. The most permanent thing a kid can go through is puberty, first of all. So when you deny a kid the opportunity to pause puberty, we're just talking about puberty blockers.
Which straight kids do all the time.
All the time.
All the time.
Yes, since the 80s, kids have been prescribed puberty blockers for a variety of reasons. And the law you
variety of
passed
reasons,
prevents
though.
that. So you steal from kids who would like to be able to pause the ability to further. Fewer than 3% of people who do any kind of transition regret it and go back. Fewer than 3%. Finally, I want to make this very clear. I'm not done. You were so mean to everybody else who want to talk to you. My turn. There has been really robust standards of care
feelings.
laid
That's why
out
you
by
can't
all the
debate with
leading
just
medical
anybody,
associations
because
that has
people
been
who
in
debate with
existence
their
for a long
feelings,
time, that is science-based,
I feel like, bro.
about guidelines for these things. But to be clear, the guidelines are very specific about this is supposed to be the parent's decision with their kid, with their medical provider. What you did was rob all those families of choices. Your opinion, because you believe you know better than science, you know better than parents, you know better than people who even do know themselves, you're going to prevent them from having options because you personally have a problem with something that a couple of people and some other people you're
Number one, people are not seeing the full context of the story, of the situation. When it comes to these people got to understand, they call it gender affirming care. I don't even call it that. I don't even know what to call it at this point. It is a money maker. It's a money maker. So why would you even give the medical providers that much that much room to even make that decision? Obviously, they're gonna say, "Oh, your child is fit for it. Your child can do for it. Their mental health is boom, boom, boom." Like, why would you even give the medical providers space in that conversation? Mainly because they make money off of it. They're making money off of it. That's one. Two, a parent should not be able to even make a decision for their child at that age, because sometimes a lot of these parents don't even know how to parent. A lot of these parents are allowing their children to parent them. The decision should be made by the child when the child is an adult to make that decision legally. When you're talking about stopping puberty something you can't go back on? There was a medical provider that testified, and they were saying like what they're doing is still fairly new and they're still learning as they go. They're pretty much coming out and saying they're using children as test dummies. Like, be for real. This is not what's up at all. And I agree with him. I'm glad he stood behind that legislation because that's ridiculous. That is where I honestly, like, that's where a lot of people have to draw the line because it's not even right versus left at that point. This is just a moral base. The amount of money that these medical providers are just making, are capitalizing off of people's struggles and like, bro.
It sounds
None
like
of them are
something within
statistically
himself.
significant. Maybe you've got dozens of people you know of. Hundreds. That's a teeny
Look, I
tiny
have a
little
jean
sliver.
jacket.
You will
He's
never know
talking out
or
of
know of
emotion
all
and
of these people,
feelings.
and
He
yet
needs to
you've
put the
decided
feelings
for them,
aside and look at
and
the
shame on you
facts.
for it.
I think we all can agree, though, that even though he's passed his legislation, over 18, you don't care what they do.
I don't care what they do.
Exactly.
You're just more so protecting the kids.
He's protecting
that
kids he
are
doesn't
going
have.
His laws more so protecting those kids that are just tomboys, tomgirls, that are just they're being force-fed this idea like, oh, I'm gay, maybe I'm a girl, and then like they're just like pink. They like are more feminine and it's like, oh, actually transition. And
I don't think it's that simple.
And
I just hate
I
that this
feel
is such an
bad.
absolutist discussion on both sides because it's like you guys are like, no, there's nothing. No, don't.
I'm
interrupt me,
not
talking.
being absolute.
I'm not being absolute either.
Okay, but I
Please
just
don't put
don't
words
think.
in my mouth.
Okay,
I'm disappointed that someone
Can you let me
is
talk,
proud
please?
to sit
Can you
here
let me
and
talk?
pass a law that harms children
I got
when
it.
we know
I'm
that our
sorry,
we know your
community
point. We got it. We know your
is
point.
so
Like, he
harmed
needs to stop
already.
talking.
All I'm
Understand.
saying is that
You've repeated
your
yourself
guys
like
are
4
not
times.
making space for the people who have gone through this process and regret it. I personally know someone in the same
Exactly.
situation that you were in, and I'm not sitting here arguing for either side because I think this is a very nuanced discussion.
Y'all watch the interview I did with, his name's Dimitri. He transitioned. He was a woman and transitioned when he was 24, 25. And he talks about his experience, and even still, he's 26 now. And even now he's like, I don't want to speak for him or speak like tell his story for himself. I'm gonna link the interview right here or wherever it may be. But he even explains like it is not what people think it is. Like, honestly and truly, like the fact that he went through what he went through at 24, can you imagine what someone who's less than half his age is going through? Like,
It used to be a 2-year
where I draw the
process.
line.
Now it's 6 months. Those things are changing because the capital
18,
and the
do
motive
as you
behind
please.
it is now,
But,
which I'm sure that you guys on this side are against capitalistic, healthcare. That's pushing it. And those guidelines, yes.
Yes.
There's a lot of money to be made in gender-affirming
giving
care.
a lot of money
Oh,
to
thank
doctors'
you.
work.
1.6
They don't wanna
million
hear it,
per
though.
child that gets on it. That's throughout their lifetime. That's how much that
There
farmer
are so
makes
many
from
other
it.
things that kids get that make people more money.
I
than
understand that, but you're not leaving any room for nuance in this discussion.
Actually, I would argue that you guys aren't leaving room for nuance because you make a decision.
I never said a statement.
Well, okay,
on
I
it.
apologize. And for those of you that I have been mean to, I'm sorry. I love and respect all of you as people.
I don't think it's me. I
Nuance
just think it's a
is
lot.
valuable, and that's why we leave it up to the parents and the medical professionals and the individuals who are making these
not
these
the medical
decisions.
professionals.
There are people.
Because you gotta realize,
who
if I
get
was a
hair plugs
twisted
and
medical
regret.
professional,
There are
I'm
people
not
who get
thinking
nose
what's
jobs
the
and
best
regret
interest
it.
for the
There is
child.
no
I'm
such
looking
thing.
at
We don't
my
give
child.
hair
I'm not-
plugs
there
and
is
nose
no-
jobs
looking
to
at
kids.
their
But
child.
kids can get nose jobs,
Okay,
can get
pause.
breast jobs. Of course, kids are getting this all the time.
Oh, he's done. She's waiting on us.
Sorry, I think it sounds like we're not really going to find a middle ground between some of you.
We will have to hug later.
But can I actually sort of like wrap it up into a middle ground
Yeah.
moment?
Yeah.
Go for it.
I think this is exactly going back to the point of why there is a separation, because it's a very lived, different experience than just being a cisgendered gay man. That was the whole point of the prompt.
This is everyone's opinion, and no matter like how frustrating it can be, going and attacking people, like it was just a lot. If that was me, like I would be so mad and I would just go off. So I commend you for really like holding your composure.
And I just want to apologize because that's
Yeah.
absolutely right. And I broke my own rule in being fired up in the things I said to you, and I'm sorry. That's not how
Apology
you
accepted.
deserve to be treated.
And I ultimately do side with my liberal brothers that I don't agree with the legislation, but
It's not malicious.
I see where you're coming from, and that exists, and people
That
that live
energy
here,
could
they
be put into
do,
so
they
many
have
other
that. But
important
I do
things.
disagree with legislation, but I don't necessarily have to personally attack you.
Drag shows are too sexual
They got
for
me the jean
minors.
jacket, the jean vest. He needs to.
I think it's important to not put a blanket statement over everything.
I was just gonna say that.
Because I know already when they step forward that we're gonna get the Miss Doubtfire example, and then it's gonna be like, oh, well, why is that okay for kids and drag is
Drag
not?
shows
I
are
love a
too
good drag
sexual
show.
for
I
minors.
frequent them all the time. Most
been
of
to a
them
drag
are
show.
not appropriate for children. Most of them, not all, but most of them. There are instances that are circulating on social media that represent a small minority
would
of drag
minors even
shows
go to a drag
where kids
show,
are
though?
present and then it's over-sexualized, people pleasuring themselves, wearing outfits that are representative of genitalia. For that reason, I would say that drag typically is not appropriate for children.
I've never been to one.
Do
but
I
just
think
feel
it needs to be
just
legislated?
speaking in the overall
No, because I
scope
don't
of
trust the
life
government to
today in
legislate it
society,
responsibly,
everything is
but I do
overly
trust parents
sexualized, from
to
the
use their
stuff
better
that's on
judgment and
TV
know that when
to
something is
what's
typically
being fed
sexual,
on, like,
it
our
most likely
children's,
will
like,
be, so
iPads
just
and
don't take your
Kindles and
kids there.
whatnot.
And I
Like,
disagree
everything
with
is
when
overly
there were folks trying to
sexualized.
ban drag. You
Like,
can't do
it's-
that. We have the First Amendment for free expression.
This world needs
I think
help.
drag
This
should be
world
able to
needs
be
help. Like, it's
celebrated
not
and just
sex
kind of
every
dress
day.
however you want.
Sex this,
I think
sex
it
that.
is good. I think it's great. But then sometimes there are instances where it's not. And like we have to talk about that rather than being ban drag or no, it's completely safe. I think we need to have that middle ground conversation on what that means.
As a child who wore my sister's clothes, I wore my mom's makeup, I put on their heels, I did all the things, I just explored my, who I was. Feeling comfortable expressing yourself and being around drag could be like for a kid like me, if I saw that it was okay to dress up and nobody was like shaming
And a lot
me,
of these
maybe that
things
could be
are,
helpful. But that doesn't change the fact that the majority of drag shows
Talking
that we
points
see
that were
today
started-
are sexualized.
We have to even
shows,
start with
yeah.
drag as
Like,
where its origin
I
comes
didn't
from. Here it
think-
happens
me
mostly in bars.
personally,
That's where these queens are
I
getting their
didn't know
training.
that,
I myself, in my time, have helped a drag
certain
queen
things happen in
organize
drag
a
shows
show
until, like,
that was
social media started
family
and
friendly.
started
And I use the
feeding our
quotations
heads.
because
Like,
she
I
actually
never
took it out of a
personally
bar.
seen it
She's like,
'cause I
we
never
can't
took
make
drag
something
shows.
family
Like, a
friendly
lot
and
of
still
these
produce
stuff,
it in a
we
place
have
where they
to
serve
ensure,
alcohol.
is it
So she
really
actually
the
ended up renting
reality
a
of it,
theater,
or is it just
asking
what
people to
social
pay for
media
tickets, and
say?
she put on a produced show where they came in from backstage and they would come on stage like you would expect to see a Broadway show. And she made sure that she told anybody that was going to come in and perform, you don't grab your breast, you don't grab your crotch, you don't shake, you don't do. We have to make sure that it has to be available and consumable for the general public, because we don't know who's going to be walking through our doors, and we have a responsibility and a duty to make sure that we don't confuse children, we don't upset people, and if we want this show to be a success, we have to make it palatable for as many people as possible.
Okay, so okay, well, so right here.
We don't say the same thing about pop stars. It's literally the same thing, and I think that it's hyper myopic, zoned in because we are queer. It's an easy way to go after us. I don't think most people that don't like drag shows or angry about drag shows actually care about drag shows or have ever even been to one. I think when you go, you said majority. I've not been to all the drag shows. I can't speak for the majority, but I've been to my fair share in New York and LA, like places where the queens turn out. They put on a show. It is not about being sexual. It's about being smart, funny, witty. They make their costumes, they do their makeup. It is art, it is entertaining. I don't think they get enough respect for what they do.
And it's sad that drag is kind of being painted that way for everyone when there are a lot of people that are doing beautiful work. But what do you think when it does
I think people
cross
who
the line
are
of being
like
sexual?
inherently afraid of drag as an art form then go to the one thing that they can,
Something
which
that
is
I really
like, oh,
like
the
is
sexualization
when-
of the
I don't know if
minor.
it's
Like,
drag shows or
but
if it's just-
which I think
Such a dog
I don't know
whistle.
what
they're
the
not
show's
taking down
called,
all the
but I
naked
like when they
statues that are
dance
like all over
this.
Italy and like
Well,
in the
yeah.
Catholic Church, like you know what I mean, like
I'm
naked
like, bro,
babies. If you're
that-
gonna
those
like
are- I've
say,
seen
well,
clips like that on TikTok.
none of the like sexualization of children and none of the inappropriateness, then you have to go after it all.
And I will get with you guys on that point where it is hyper-focused on the drag queens when it is a bigger conversation of what is acceptable and not acceptable for children, especially pop stars. When I've been to Beyonce's tour 4 times this year so far.
Lucky you.
Okay.
You need to go. While I'm there, I love the experience, I love the show, but I'm also fighting in my head being like a super big fan, but I'm like, hey, this is really inappropriate for children. But no one's talking about that
Because it's Beyonce. Because it's
Yeah.
Beyonce.
Well, Beyonce's a
There's
pop
so much
star
footage
and-
out there of adult women with their minor daughters going to a Justin Bieber concert and being out of their minds
Yeah.
about him being in any way sexual. They respond when he does a sexual thing. This is a norm. It's just that in this case,
That
it's
goes
about
back to
queer
my main
people,
point. I feel like
and
everything
norms
is
don't get to
overly
apply to us.
sexualized.
Right, and I think that just art in general has the potential to, blur the lines of what's socially acceptable and what isn't. That's what makes it art. So it's important to remember that all forms of art, and I speak on this on my platforms too. When I have kids, they're not going to Hooters. I'm sorry. I'm not taking them there. I'm also not taking them to a drag show, and I'm not going to take them to a Sam Smith concert either. So, and that's not because that art is bad, it's because I'm not comfortable with my kids being there. But if the government is in the
I have a
business of
question for you.
Yes.
You said that you feel like you maybe could have experienced something that was good for you by seeing drag when you were little.
Right.
And then
how
you just
would-
said you wouldn't take your kids to
Because
something
the
like that.
majority of drag shows that I've seen, I wouldn't find appropriate. I'm not going to run the risk. I'm not saying that there isn't a drag show that would be good for a child. I never said that. I'm saying that from my experience going to drag shows, I'm not going to run the risk of taking my kid and putting them in an environment that I don't deem
Do you want
appropriate.
kids?
I mean,
Yes,
we
absolutely.
have a responsibility to police our own community. If a drag queen comes out from backstage into a bar and someone has their child, that drag queen should be like, stop, whose child is this? Why is this child in this bar?
you.
Under 21? Excuse me, they're gonna lose their alcohol license, especially in California.
Although I do think that there are wonderful drag shows that are amazing for adults, also may not be appropriate for children, but it's not inherently the art form that determines
I agree.
that.
Yeah, I mean, the vast majority of drag shows happen in places that are 21 and
remember
up.
growing up,
So
my
it's not as
parents
if there's a
did not
rash of
play when it
kids
comes
being
to,
taken
like,
into bars and
stuff
seeing.
we
But
watch.
I
They,
think it's
like,
really
as far
important
as,
to
like,
note that the
they-
argument
they
about
give
whether or
without
not a
exposing
certain
us
art
with
form is
too overly
inappropriately sexual or
sexualized
not
stuff. Like,
is a
for
tale as
example,
old as
my mom
time.
watched The
I think
Bachelorette
drag
and
is being
Bachelor
targeted
growing
because
up.
it
She would
pings
not
that
allow us
part
to
of
watch
people
it
who
with
aren't
her.
sure what's okay.
Like, something as small as
Adults
Bachelorette,
take
can
their
you
young kids
imagine?
to Hooters
That's how
all
it'll be
the
with my
time.
kids. Like, my
Adults
kids
show
will
their
not
kids
be
R-rated movies all the
exposed
time, but those are their
to
personal
overly
choices. And here's the thing:
sexualized
it is
stuff
not unknown what's
as
developmentally
kids.
appropriate. The American Psychological Association, the American Association of Pediatrics, there's tons of well-researched guidance on this. This is not an open question. There's no need for these laws, but also it's not accurate to say that most of them are sexualized, because how in the world would you be able to empirically prove that?
Totally.
I would date a trans man.
Okay, y'all. We're gonna stop it right there. Let me know if you want a part 2. There's about 3 more questions. There was like 2 other ones that I skipped. But anyways, if you want a part 2, comment down below. I want to know your thoughts on the 2 prompts that we watched today. Comment down below. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on post notifications so you're notified whenever I post a new video. I think overall, from the 2 prompts that I've watched, I think it was pretty good. I just wish that people would stop talking with, like, maneuvering with so much emotion, in a sense, because it's like it takes away from the actual discussion. Like, when you keep interrupting, when you keep rolling your eyes, when you keep doing like excessive like body posture, it's like it takes away from the conversation. But overall, I did like the two prompts. I think the conservative with the suit, the black conservative, the conservative with the white shirt, and the gay liberal with the blue jeans. Sorry, I don't have their names stuck in my head or whatever. But I think they did really good with expressing their position and their points. But I want to know what you think. Make sure you comment down below. Follow me on my social media. Thank you all. I love y'all all. And this is Uduak, connecting people with policy. Toodles. God bless.